Live from KSAT12, the 6 o'clock news starts right now.
Super Tuesday is here, and tens of thousands of voters in Bexar County have already cast their ballots.
This despite a few hiccups in parts of the county this morning and this afternoon. We'll have those details and full Election Day coverage coming up in just a bit, but first.
We were able to establish a protocol to allow for these quarantines to be released orderly without exposure to the public. The order is through the office of the mayor.
San Antonio Mayor Ron Nirenberg says he is pleased with the new CDC guidelines required for releasing coronavirus patients and quarantined evacuees who are here in our city.
That's after a federal judge rejected a temporary restraining order that would have prolonged a quarantine at Joint Base San Antonio Lackland for a group of people who were on the Diamond Princess cruise ship that was docked in Japan.
Our Devin Clark explains how all of this has negatively impacted the local economy and why the mayor says it shouldn't.
In the end, we can't force the CDC to do the testing. Unfortunately, we don't have jurisdiction, but we do have the authority and tools available to us to affect change.
The city didn't get the temporary restraining order to keep quarantined cruise ship evacuees at Lackland for more testing, but the CDC did help to facilitate a release protocol that the mayor says minimizes the public risk of exposure to the COVID-19.
And that's what was conducted today, from base directly to airport and on their way home.
Those being released from Lackland today never showed any symptoms, but the concerns intensified after it was determined that a woman who was infected with the coronavirus was released from the Texas Center for Infectious Disease before a third pending test came back. That test showed that she still had traces of the virus in her system. The mayor had issued a public health emergency as part of his efforts to change the testing policy. It's a move that local event planning companies say had a negative impact on business.
We had a couple of groups coming into town from up north, and they were bringing a few hundred people with them. And with the notice, their corporate office made the decision to not let them come.
But the mayor stressing that the city's efforts to combat the outbreak remain proactive and preventative, and the public is still at very low risk of infection.
San Antonio has no community spread of this virus. We want to keep it that way.
And the CDC has also agreed not to release anyone with pending test results. Right now, 7 people who got to Lackland after the quarantined evacuees were released are still in quarantine at Lackland at this point, and 11 people who did test positive for the coronavirus are still being treated at the Texas Center for Infectious Disease. The mayor says he does not anticipate any more evacuees coming to San Antonio. Right outside the mayor's office, Devin Clark, KSAT 12 News.
All right, thanks, Devin. Meantime, the San Antonio Metropolitan Health District has opened a coronavirus hotline for anyone who has questions about this virus. The hotline is available in both English and Spanish. The number we hope to give you here just momentarily. Just this afternoon, 9 people have now been confirmed dead in Washington state due to the coronavirus. There's that number we were waiting on, 210-207-5779 to call the San Antonio Metro Health Department if you have any questions. We'll have the very latest details on the spread and the latest death toll in the U.S. coming up at 6:30.
Joe, other news now, an accident reconstruction expert challenging the state's expert as the defense begins to present its case in the intoxication manslaughter trial of Rosalinda Alalde. Among his criticisms, the state got it wrong when it came to speed. Paul Venema takes a look.
When she crashed broadside into a sedan that was preparing to enter the Loop 1604 access road from a private driveway, 24-year-old Rosalinda Alalde's SUV was going 80 miles an hour. That was according to the state's accident reconstruction expert. 22-year-old Mario Velasquez Palau was killed, 4 passengers in his car seriously hurt. During a pre-trial hearing and during his testimony, defense accident reconstructionist Dr. Eric Moody disagreed with that 80-mile-an-hour speed estimate.
It looked to me like there were several calculations of speed, and I wasn't sure which one the officer was going to go with his testimony.
Moody estimated Alalde's speed between 56 and 60 miles an hour. The bulk of his testimony tracked what he said during that hearing as he challenged many of the findings of the state's expert.
Some of the calculations that were done didn't appear to be consistent with the configuration of this crash as far as the alignment of the vehicles go.
On Friday, the jury got a first-hand look at what the state's configuration of the vehicle's alignment was, as prosecutors had both vehicles positioned in the courthouse parking lot.
There was one point at which both experts did agree Olalde's car had only one tire on the road, the others on the sidewalk where the crash occurred. Paul Venom, KSAT12 News.
Other top stories today, a man who was jailed on a capital murder charge is dead after hanging himself inside his jail cell. The Bexar County Sheriff's Office identified him as 20-year-old Joel Zambrano. Zambrano was charged in connection with the 2018 murder of Roy Ponce, who was killed during a home invasion on Bassey Road. According to BCSO, detention deputies found Zambrano hanging in his cell around 6 this morning. They reportedly tried to save his life, but he later died at a hospital. BCSO says the death is now under investigation.
Today, we learned the identity of the 29-year-old man who barricaded himself inside a home after setting a neighbor's vehicle and his own home on fire. The Bexar County Medical Examiner tells us his name is David Earl Claiborne. Police say he hid in a house on Litchfield off of Stonehaven. That was back on February 19th. Police say Claiborne lived in that house with his parents, but his parents were not home at the time. So far, investigators think he died after inhaling too much smoke and soot from the fire he set himself.
Police say a West Side family woke up this morning to 4 masked men with guns inside their home. The home invasion happened in the 5400 block of Wincheap Farm, not far from Calabria and Callahan roads. Katrina Weber tells us why police may not have an easy time solving this case.
Outside a home in the 5400 block of Wincheap Farm, San Antonio police tried to figure out what had happened inside. They spoke with a 40-year-old man who told them he and his family woke up after 1 this morning to 4 men who had kicked in his door, wearing masks and carrying weapons, some of them AR-15s. He says they pointed those guns at their faces and demanded money. The robbers ended up running off with property instead, including their cell phones. But the man says before they left, they fired 2 shots at his home. Police say they were able to track one of the phones, and it led them to a car a few miles away. That car, though, which had bullet holes in its side, was empty. The robbers got away. Based on what police say, it looks like they may be on their own when it comes to solving this case. They say the victims were less than helpful and wouldn't even let investigators inside their home to look for evidence. Reporting from Public Safety Headquarters, Katrina Weber, KSAT12 News.
Time saver traffic right now. This is the TransGuide camera at I-10 in Frio, and you can see I-10 as it winds around towards downtown. Very slow going. It is moving, though, which is an improvement over sometimes when we take this shot. But again, very heavy traffic going into downtown. This is a live look at I-10 in Frio.
Let's take a look outside at weather conditions right now. 73 degrees out there, but we are looking ahead to tonight, overnight, Adam. What could potentially be a stormy one?
Yeah, all is quiet right now. It's overnight tonight and into the early morning hours tomorrow where we have the storm threat. Right now it's quiet. 73 degrees here in town for the most part. We're in the low to mid 70s, some 60s in the hill country. And through the evening, look at this. Just a cloudy sky, humid. By midnight is when we're expecting storms to start developing out west closer to the border. So main time threat, I think, in San Antonio is about 1 a.m. to 8 a.m. We're going to talk more about that and talk about the primary risks coming right up.
All right, thanks, Adam. Polls have just closed on the East Coast, and Joe Biden projected to win the Virginia primary, while Bernie Sanders is projected to win the Vermont primary. That's according to the Associated Press.
Here in Texas, you have less than 1 hour to cast your ballot if you haven't already. And as of this afternoon, more than 75,000 people have voted in Bexar County. That's just today. And we're hearing there's a potential for a record-breaking turnout by 7 o'clock when the polls close.
Well, good news. Voting today has been relatively smooth for the county, but there was at least one bump in the road. Jesse DeGoyato joins us now live from the Bexar County Elections Office with the latest on Super Tuesday. Jesse.
Before I get to the bump in the road, I just want to show you, since we have to keep this far away from voters, there is a significant line snaking through the parking lot into the elections office and then snaking back out toward the back of the building where the voting is actually going on. That's what kind of turnout they're seeing here at the Bexar County Elections Office. Now, as far as that hiccup or that bump in the road. The most significant was a 2-hour power outage at the Copernicus Community Center. But since these new voting machines that are normally electrical powered, they also can run on battery power, so the voting went on. But other than that, says the elections administrator,
not a problem, not a problem. Like, we're not there to 7 o'clock yet, but everything works. You know, we had the power go out at Copernicus, but we're pleased.
She also says voters seem to be getting used to the new $12.5 million voting system. Last November, during the constitutional amendments election, there was a bit of a learning curve, but it also helps, she says, that now voters can vote at any of the county's 280 voting centers, not a specific precinct. The idea, of course, is to make voting as convenient as possible. Callan says that if today's turnout keeps up, that there's a good chance that if it meets the early vote turnout of 138,000, that would be a record turnout in Bexar County. Now, Garrett Berger has been talking to some of those voters out at Lions Field. Garrett, what are you hearing?
Well, we're definitely seeing just as much activity as you out there at the Bexar County Elections Office. Here at Lions Field, you can see the line behind me starts over here and it stretches around the front of the building. It's even gotten to the point where parking's become difficult for voters coming in, as this line has been moving pretty slowly. Voters are now coming out and telling us that they waited about an hour before getting their ballot. But several people have told us this particular election is important for them. And some said they didn't have the chance to get out for the early voting. Though one Democratic voter said that ended up working out for her, as 2 presidential candidates, including her favorite, dropped out in the days leading up to the primary.
And so now that Buttigieg has suspended his campaign and he's endorsing Biden, along with 2 others, we feel that's the direction we're going to go in. And so at least our votes are going to count even more now that Biden is kind of neck and neck with Sanders.
Voters coming out have also told us that the new machines that Bexar County Elections is using have been working well for them. Now, you still have a little bit less than an hour if you still need to go and come and cast your ballot. And if your normal polling place is looking like this, don't worry. As Jesse mentioned, you can go to any polling location within Bexar County and still cast your ballot for your races. Live at Line Field, I'm Garrett Berger, KSAT12 News.
Thank you, Garrett. And one thing to add to all that, as long as you're in line at 7 o'clock, you will get to vote. You just have to be in line at 7 o'clock. You don't have to have voted by 7 o'clock. Just be in line. And we will, of course, be updating election results throughout the night. And starting at 7 o'clock tonight, I'm going to have live results and reaction for you during an election night Spreester sessions. You can watch on KSAT.com or on the KSAT TV app, which can be downloaded on your streaming device. And of course, we will have all the election results tonight on the Night Beat and online. Again, tonight's Spreester session begins at 7 o'clock.
And with Super Tuesday underway, the countdown to the general election now begins. We want to help keep you informed on local and national races through November. You can head to KSAT.com right now to subscribe to our Vote 2020 newsletter. There's a new edition sent out every single Tuesday.